You're hanging out in the House of Sunny podcast, where it's always sunny, mostly because of your host, comedian and YouTuber, Sunny Loman. Want to know what Sunny and her friends are thinking about this week? Well, here she is, Sunny Loman.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to the House of Sunny podcast. I'm your host, Sunny, and I'm here with Doug from The Rational Capitalist. What's up, Doug?
Hello, Sunny. How are you today?
I'm good.
Awesome.
How are you? Should we start with the pleasantries?
Right. Yeah. No one wants to hear that shit.
I know. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? I'm fine. Meanwhile, the radio show ticks on.
Yeah. People just want you to jump in.
Just jump right into it. We're going to talk today about Trump's racist tweets. That's what all the headlines are telling me. That I went to go get the full tweet, and I'm trying to fill in on Google, Trump's full, and the next word is racist tweet. And I just put in tweet. I didn't put in racist tweet. And all that I got were just headlines of Trump's racist tweet. So we've already decided it's racist. That's
Google
the
has told
conclusion. Google, CNN, everybody has told us that conclusion is a fixed conclusion. So we're going to talk about Trump's racist tweets today. I have an insight that I don't think I've heard anyone say. I mean, we've heard a lot of analysis of it so far because it was a few days ago. And I'm here anyway. We'll get into that in a minute. I'll read the whole tweets. And then I've got an Ellsworth Toohey quote I want to read to you because some dude posted this to Quora, and he was just talking about why he supports Trump and he posted this Toohey quote, and I read it and I thought, holy crap, that's the world today. And we all talk about Atlas Shrugged and how predictive it was. And then there's this quote of Ellsworth basically
tell people who Toohey is for the non-objectivist people.
Hasn't everyone read The Fountainhead? So Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged, and Ayn Rand wrote The Fountainhead, and the main villain in The Fountainhead is Ellsworth Toohey. And there's this quote in there where he's telling another, I guess, semi-villain, Peter Keating in the novel. I don't think he's a villain anymore. I think he's the poor schmuck rather than the villain. The villain is Ellsworth Toohey.
Yeah.
And he's telling the poor schmuck all the inside story about how he's really just an evil genius who's been twisting everybody to his own will. Anyway, there's this quote in there, and I was like, holy crap, that's like what it's like on Facebook. That's online life right now, is this universe that Toohey was trying to create. So I think that's interesting, and it's, Ayn Rand came out of Soviet Russia, so I'm sure she knew exactly how it's done. And I think we all need to realize what's going on here, and that is what's happening. It's the playbook. It's the same playbook. And it's here in America. Okay.
So you're going to make us wait for that.
That's coming up. That's coming
quote.
up. All right. So let's talk about Trump's tweets. And I guess first I'll just read it, and then we can. I loved it, by the way, Doug.
Yes.
Yeah.
Loved
Okay.
it.
So we can talk about that. And all right, here it is. This was July 14th on Trump's Twitter feed. So interesting to see progressive Democrat congresswomen who originally came from countries whose governments are a complete and total catastrophe, the worst, most corrupt and inept anywhere in the world, if they even have a functioning government at all, now loudly and viciously telling the people of the United States, the greatest and most powerful nation on earth, how our government is to be run. Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, then come back and show us how it is done. These places need your help badly. You can't leave fast enough. I'm sure Nancy Pelosi would be very happy to quickly work out free travel arrangements. So funny.
Great.
And I'm sure she would, because she can't stand them because they're the high sparrow and she's the establishment, the establishment Dem.
Totally.
Okay, so apparently this is racist, y'all. Apparently, so obviously only one of those four women are actually from a foreign country. The other two of them are children of immigrants, and one is just a black American from Chicago. So the inaccuracy there, I actually think that's kind of funny, and it's typical of him to do that. It's just sort of funny to be inaccurate in a way that it doesn't really matter, because at heart, they're the same. Their anti-Americanism is foreign. It's foreign. So he's basically lumping them together in the spirit of they're anti-American. And in spirit, they're the same. They're soul sisters, right? Even though only
That's a great way to
three
put it.
of them are like immigrants or whatever.
They might as well be from another country.
They might as well.
They're
hate
so
us.
anti-American.
They should all go to countries that better suit their philosophy. And I think about this a lot with people who are socialists. And I know that it's supposedly offensive to say, well, then just leave. But here's the thing. There's only one country that's America. There are lots and lots of places where their philosophy is actually already implemented, and they can go there and try to make it work better rather than change this one. I mean, why can't a group of us just have it the way we want it? Apparently, if you're not a socialist, you're not allowed to have a country.
Yeah, only socialists are allowed to have a country.
Right. So this is how I see it. I see it as him. And this is kind of how Trump acts. I mean, he just sort of acts on a sense, on a gut kind of level. And that's why people like him, because he taps right into their gut and what they're seeing and what they're perceiving. And is he accurate? No, he's not accurate. But he's also just tweeting. He's not writing an essay. So, I mean, people just need to get over it. And I'm not like defending him because I'm just trying to come up with ways to defend him. I read this, I cheered, because this hit me in the gut of, yeah, those four ladies should shut up. They should go to a country where their evil shit already exists. And those are shitholes, as Donald Trump said. They are shitholes. And they should just go there. I agree. And why don't they agree? Why don't they go if this is what they want? If that's how they want to live? They should go there. Right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's my gut reaction. And so I'm just saying, yeah, he appeals to people's guts. And he speaks from the gut. So it's not going to be like to the letter. And I'm not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying it doesn't have to be accurate as long as it's moral. That's, I mean, in a way, she's kind of right. So we can get into that on another show. I don't know.
That's their playbook, and it works.
It does work because people
he's essentially
respond.
making a moral argument.
He's making a moral argument, and people respond to the moral argument. They don't give a shit about your technicalities. The Green New Deal is going to work because it's tapping into people's sense of wanting to be led and controlled by these overlords, even though the ideas in it are freaking crazy. Anyway, all right, so go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the ideas espoused by this group of women, this is not just garden variety, democracy, Democrat Republican disagreements. They are fundamentally anti-American in the most profound possible way. They think our history is racist. They think our history is based on genocide and racism. They want to overthrow our government for socialism. They
want to silence
don't believe
you.
in free speech.
They're nihilists.
They want to destroy. Exactly. Go ahead.
I'm going to read a quote. I'm going to read two quotes from one of these ladies. Here's the lady who's just the black Chicago lady. So this is the one who's the most American of the four. She has parents who are American. She's American, although her dad was a druggie who was in jail the whole time, and she was raped and blah, blah, blah. Like she took her crappy life and decided to hate everybody and hurt people. So this is a quote that she just said the other day. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. If you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up, because we need you to represent that voice. And Trump is racist.
And Trump is racist, right? That's just naked racism.
Naked racism. And here's another thing she said. The people closest to the pain should be closest to the power. That is creepy. Like, that's a woman who's a nihilist right there. She wants to tear it down and hurt people.
Well, she's a Marxist. But what my sort of punchline of saying this was that these people are so profoundly anti-American that for him to react the way he did and to, tweet this, I think the reason it resonated with me psychologically is when there's this level of evil, right, that's trying to attack you, my first reaction is get away, evil, get away from me. That's a healthy psychological reaction to this, is get the F out.
You're not going to sit down with these women and exchange essays on philosophy, okay? or the people who voted for these people. You're not going to sit down and share essays with these people. So that's not going to happen.
And his attack was not racial. It was ideological. I mean, communism, environmentalism, and pro-Islam, those are not races. Those are ideologies. And he's saying, look, if you're that far gone and your ideas are so antithetical to America's core values, which is private property, liberty, freedom of speech, then you don't belong here, in essence.
Yeah, seriously, get out. Honestly, just go somewhere. We need to have an exile place for people like this. If we can't deport them, we need an exile island.
But now, what I'm saying is, because a lot of people's reaction is their negative reaction is also psychological. So I think you have to ask yourself, if you're having a negative reaction to that, why is that? I think you've got a problem.
That's interesting.
Because, if, first of all, you have a psychological reaction.
Like the reaction that it's racist. I mean, what do you think what is the psychological? I don't know. You're not an expert, but.
Yeah, I mean, let me put it this way. I mean, I think a healthy reaction when someone is calling out evil in a very sort of bellicose way here and saying, get away from us, get out. Yeah, my first reaction is positive, and I think that's healthy to think, get away from me. Now, you can then rationally go back and say, okay, well, wait a second. What does he really mean? Does he really mean he's sending the police over to deport them? No, they're American citizens. We can't do that. Of course, that's absolutely not what he's saying. He's making essentially a kind of moral argument that, look, folks, if you all are this, you are so far outside the mainstream of American thought and American values, we really don't want you here. Most Americans want you gone. And particularly in the case of Omar, where she was rescued by America. I mean, she came from Somalia and was essentially rescued by our country. And now, rather than show any kind of sympathy towards America, American values, and then say, you know what? Okay, I think we have some political problems, and here's what I would want to change. But generally, I think America's a good country, and that's why I'm here, and that's why we love it, and so on and so forth. I would probably give them a little bit of slack, but they don't do that. They never do that. It's always negative. It's just an absolutely bleak and dark vision of America, and their policies reflect that. And I think that the healthy reaction is get out of here, get away from us. Yeah. And so if you think, in a larger way, this is what we need to be doing. This is how we need to be thinking is, first, morally, how do we feel about this and what do we think about these people and how do we react to them? And then, what are the actual tactics and the logistics of trying to fight this battle? But to punch at him or to react to him negatively if you're on our side, to go after him rather than address the core evil that he's reacting to, That to me is outrageous.
It's a weird focus for sure. I mean, even if I was bothered by his style or his inaccuracy, I don't think I'd really care very much, because at the end of the day, any punches against the evil are fine with me. I mean, they're that bad. And somebody accused me of being amoral yesterday for saying that on Facebook. Like, you know.
What? It's the opposite.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's weird.
Well, I mean, some of these people are saying, you know, that this, and I think this is telling too. You asked about where I think this psychology comes from. My patriotism is not blind. You know, my love of our country and American values is rational. It's not unfounded. And I think for most people in this country, maybe they're not as deeply intellectual as we are, or some of our listeners are, in terms of really defining and explicitly understanding them. But their love of their country is not unfounded. You know, they have experience. They're pretty smart people. And this caricature that, you know, Trump is just appealing to this sort of love it or leave it tribalism is such an insult, I think, to most Americans. I don't even know what it means to be. I guess there are probably some people that are so dumb that they just think whatever America does is great and it's just love it or leave it, no matter what we do. I don't think anyone.
I don't think they think that, because they're not saying, "Oh, sure, America can be socialist." And I'm fine with that. Like, they're actually against that. They're trying to preserve the society that came out of the Enlightenment and the Constitution, the society that we still pretty much enjoy: freedom of speech, freedom to protect ourselves, freedom to, you know, just the sense of life of being an independent individual who gets to make their own decisions and can't be told what to do. That's the people on the right who voted for Trump.
Right.
So it is. And to call them just a bunch of tribalists who would take anything. The reason they like Trump is because of tweets like this. And the people who think they're stupid hate these tweets. They hate these tweets.
That's the psychology underlying it. It's a sort of a stereotype, and it's right out of the leftist playbook. It's this caricature of the basket of deplorables. It's that Americans are fundamentally dumb. They're stupid, you know, they're emotional,
unintellectual, they just love
tribalist, you know, clingers to their guns and their Bibles, and, you know, this kind of, and this is why Trump won, because these people who comprise a majority, I think, of our population are not having that. That's bullshit. These people, no, maybe a lot of them aren't college professors, thank God, but these are people that, through their experience, through their work, through their life, through their families, they love our country and they know exactly what's at stake here, and they see it disappearing. And these people, you know, it's one thing for the left to react in the way we would expect them to react to anything like this, but for people on the right to be criticizing Trump and for his supporters for having a positive reaction to this, I think that's outrageous. And it just plays right into the leftist playbook and this caricature. And, you know, I think the average American, the average Trump supporter, their love of this country is not blind and unfounded. And I think to think otherwise is a total misread and a failure to appreciate this culture war we're in.
Yeah, perhaps. So when I was trying to find this tweet, I went to Google and searched, and I keep having this problem where I go to Google and I don't get what I want, and I'm having to go to DuckDuckGo to get what I want. And if that's not a sign of Google's imminent demise, I don't know what is. And I'm talking about just jokes or anything. Like, there's so many things now that they've algorithmed out to feed you exactly what they want you to see rather than what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. So I go Trump's full tweet, because I didn't just want like a quote or whatever. I wanted the full tweet. And the first like 2 pages is just article after article of analysis. And the headline after headline is Trump's racist tweet, Trump's racist tweet. I go over to DuckDuckGo, and the second one is a National Review article with the full tweet in it, you know?
Wow.
It's just, okay. So
Can I say one other thing real quick?
Well, hang on. I just want to say this about the racism.
Yeah.
There is a point to be made, and I think this is where people say the racism comes from. That when you're looking at these four, to automatically assume that they're immigrants or that they're not Americans, or that to people is racist. That he's looking at four minority women and he sees foreigners. Okay, but the thing, my insight that I've heard no one else say is that these women do everything they can to push their heritage in your face. They don't push their American heritage in your face. They push their other country heritage in your face all the time.
Yeah.
Ocasio-Cortez is Puerto Rican. Like she can't wait to do the accent for you. You know, the full accent when she's talking Puerto Rico. I can't do it, but you know, she every time she talks, she falls into her little Spanish accent. She's always talking about being Puerto Rican. Mm-hmm. Talib Rashad, is that her name? She's always talking about being Palestinian. She is Palestinian. She calls herself Palestinian. That's not even a country, but anyway, it's a group of people over in the Middle East fighting to destroy Israel, and that's who she is. She's Palestinian. She's not American, and she shoves that in your face endlessly. Even the black woman from Chicago, she's not American. She's an African American. And I don't normally think of them as foreigners, but she's choosing to define herself by another country, as are a lot of black people these days. So, you know, you look at the four minorities, you see foreigners because they want you to see that. They want you to see that because that's their card for power. That's how they got into their positions of power, by being un-American and being foreigners. And in fact, Ocasio-Cortez, who grew up in a white suburb, pretends to have grown up in ethnic immigrant Bronx.
Yeah, total lie.
So it is absolutely normal to accidentally assume, and I don't think it was an accident, but if he did make that accident, they can't tell you loud enough that they're from another country, but Trump makes that assumption in a tweet and he's racist. So They are racist about themselves. They're shoving their heritage in your face nonstop 24/7 because it's their way of getting power, but we're not allowed to acknowledge it or see it.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I've heard no one else make that point.
That's a great point because they are identifying themselves as non-Americans in every possible way. They're characterizing
all the time.
And they're in a way to gain, you know, their identity as marginalized people.
Right.
Is what gives them currency in these left-wing circles, right? You have to have a non-white, non-American identity.
The more other you are, the better you do in the power circles, in the prestige circles. So, but we're not allowed to see that or notice it and make the wrong assumption about them.
And when you recognize it and acknowledge it and fully embrace it,
xenophobe,
you're a racist.
You hate brown people. Every time you see a brown person, you see a foreigner. Well, yeah, you're shoving it in my face.
Yeah.
All right. So Trump did a response. Those tweets were not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. The so-called vote to be taken is a Democrat con game. Republicans should not show weakness and fall into their trap. This should be a vote on the filthy language, statements, and lies told by the Democrats. He's talking about the thing in Congress, whatever that they did. Who cares? Congresswomen who I truly believe, based on their actions, hate our country. Get a list of the horrible things they have said. Omar is polling at 8%, Cortez at 21%. Nancy Pelosi tried to push them away, but now they are forever wedded to the Democrat Party. See you in 2020. So,
that's great.
Yeah. He's awesome. Trying to beat them in an election too, folks.
Yeah.
It's an election year. So what, you want them to win? You want the Democrats to take power in this country after the last 3 years and what they've shown us they're going to do to us? In the last 3 years, they have used every single available means to silence conservatives and Republicans and libertarians and even just people who want to be an independent thinker.
If you're to the right of Antifa.
Tim Pool, a total liberal. Joe Rogan, all of these liberals. And they're deplatforming, shadow banning, silencing. And if you think that these are private companies, holy crap, Doug, right? Earlier this week, Doug shared this article from Zero Hedge about all the interest. This is so interesting, you guys. Hundreds, apparently, or 100 or more, former Obama and Hillary aides, I guess, or different people,
members of their
administration,
or their team,
are now placed in positions of power in these tech companies. Where else do you see political people whose business is politics? That's their career. They worked for Obama for 8 years in a high-level position in administration. Interesting how now they're over at Facebook deciding who gets silenced and who doesn't. How interesting that they've given up politics for Silicon Valley. That's fascinating. And this article names them one name after another. Former Hillary, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a laundry list. You can't believe it.
Well,
it's not a few people.
Let me read just 2 or 3 sentences of this.
But it's not a few people. It's a lot of people. Go ahead.
The policy director at Facebook was Nancy Pelosi's chief of staff. The algorithm policy at Facebook worked for Hillary at the State Department. The head of content policy worked for the Hillary presidential campaign. The person in charge of privacy policy at Facebook used to work for Al Franken before he worked for Senator Bonoff, before he worked for Congressman Oberstar. The director in charge of countering hate and extremism, quote unquote, at Facebook came from the Clinton Foundation. The person at Facebook who currently, quote, oversees programs on countering hate speech and promoting pluralism and, quote, develops internal third-party education and drives thought leadership on hate speech and content moderation, unquote, was one of Obama's policy advisors at the White House.
So interesting.
That's just the beginning of it.
And he says there are a lot more. And so interesting.
This is diversity. This is corporate diversity.
Well, I've never heard of so many politicians suddenly in a year's time moving en masse from Washington to Silicon Valley. How interesting. I wonder what they're doing there. I wonder if they're coordinated. Oh, no, it can't be.
No, private company.
Right? I knew that Congress people were putting pressure on Facebook and Apple and these guys. I knew that there was pressure being put on these guys to do different things. I mean, that was done out in the public. And I thought, well, if that's what's happening in public, what's happening behind the scenes in terms of pressure? But I didn't know that the political power on the Democrat side has been placing high-level people in high-level positions within those companies that actually work there. I mean, it's literally like a Cuffy Miggs from Atlas Shrugged working in Facebook offices to tell people how to think.
Right.
About who's allowed to speak. That's Cuffy Miggs over there in Facebook.
The rabbit's foot in one hand and in one pocket and a pistol
and a gun in the other. I mean, that's fucking happening. So don't tell me these are private companies. This is government. This is Democrats trying to silence their opposition and the opposition to socialism and communism. Wake up.
You said something to me yesterday that I laughed at because it's such a good question. We were talking about this and you said, because we were talking about these people that were, kind of on the right that were mad about this tweet. And you said, what does reacting to a bad person look like?
Right.
If you see Ilhan Omar, right, in her hijab and, decrying America's racist, genocidal history and this evil country that she wants to, change through Congress. If you're not outraged and be like, go back to Somalia. Like, why are you here?
Yeah.
You're evil. Get away from it. If you don't have that like kind of reaction. So how would you react to that? Do we just write her a letter?
Right. How does it look? If it doesn't look like this, like what Trump did, how does it look to fight Ilhan Omar?
I want to ask these never Trumper types. Like, what do you, so we just send
what's our plan?
We defriend her or unfriend her on Facebook. I mean,
we speak to our Facebook bubble. She's terrible. Hey, I've said she's terrible. Good for you. I'm happy for you. You're not doing jack shit.
And more importantly, how do you counter this, like in the popular culture? Because it's not just, we have to organize a campaign to get her out of office and primary challenge her and find, and by the way, I was glad to see this Jamaican immigrant woman, this Republican's taking on AOC in her district as an aside. It was awesome. But, while you're doing that thing, how do you win the moral, the culture war? By being mealy-mouthed, wormy, like, okay, well, maybe she has a point. We did have race. I think you react the way Trump's reacting. That's why people are resonating with it. We're sick of it.
Yeah,
this is political correctness gone wild. Also,
the way that you win a culture over is through humor and art, and it's not through. I mean, essays are important. Read Atlas Shrugged, read The Fountainhead. That's what I say. Because that to me is it's more visceral and it can change your psychology a little bit more.
Well, that's 5% of the population that's going to do that.
So.
What about the rest? The people that are seeing this, and when they see mealy-mouthed little wormy,
I guess that's what I'm saying,
Republicans.
Right. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like Trump is a personality who's being tough and he's making other people bold and he's winning people over to his side just by being a winner. And that's how you win the culture war. It's not like, I don't know, the same people who don't like Trump and who hate his style and they're kind of snobs and they look down on the rest of us who like him. And I mean, they call us, like a Trump bots or whatever, as if we're not thinking. We're just like Trump because somehow he's like mesmerized us.
Yeah.
I'm hypnotized by this orange Cheeto man. Somehow, I'm hypnotized. What's that from? Is that from a Living Color sketch? Something.
Well, Letterman used to always say that.
No, hypnotized.
Hypnotized. Yeah. But you got to crush. I mean, when you destroy your enemy, you have to morally crush them. You just don't defeat them. You have to make them a laughing stock. And this is part of that process.
Yeah, that tweet was goddamn the best thing I've ever fucking read. That's what I mean.
And also what he's doing is by drawing attention to them, he's identifying the worst aspect of the left and the Democrats. And he's not just going after Pelosi and Schumer and these middle of the roaders. He's saying this is what the Democratic Party is.
And he's making them have to talk about their anti-Americanism. I think because that's a big part of who they are.
You go after their strength and their moral center, and you defeat that, and you defeat the whole thing. I'm tired of fighting the middle of the roaders. Let's go after the most extreme, radical, most consistent defenders on the left, and let's attack them and call them out for what they are.
Well, we have to, because they're actually the ones in power. I mean, they're actually taking power now. And that's what don't you see that, everybody? Pelosi is no longer in charge. I knew that the day that, and she's awful too. I mean, since when is she fucking moderate? But she at least is motivated by money, I guess.
But right. She has some ties.
She's motivated by corruption and money, not just, I want to crush and kill people.
So, what would these people do in the Star Wars universe? Darth Vader and is the rebellion just a mindless tribe? And if if someone says, "Hey, Darth Vader, get the F out of here," would you be like, "Oh, that's racist. That's not right. He's."
You should write him an essay.
Right.
The Skywalker tribe is just too collectivist.
Yeah. Yeah. Write him a letter.
And independently, not together, because That would be collectivism.
That's too tribal.
I sound like Kim Kardashian when I'm doing it. I'm black. I don't know why. Okay. So on that note, let me read you this Ellsworth Toohey quote, because I feel like this is where we are so clearly headed. And this book was written in the 40s. So she must have pulled this right out of Soviet Russia, you know? Okay. And by the way, I'm going to read it, then we'll talk about it. Okay, here's the quote. Here's Ellsworth Toohey talking to Peter Keating. The world of the future, the world I want, a world of obedience and of unity. A world where the thought of each man will not be his own, but an attempt to guess the thought of the next neighbor who'll have no thought, and so on, around the globe. Since all must agree with all, a world where no man will hold a desire for himself, but will direct all his efforts to satisfy the desires of his neighbor, who'll have no desires, except to satisfy the desires of the next neighbor, who'll have no desires, around the globe, Peter. Since all must serve all, a world in which man will not work for so innocent an incentive of money, but for the headless monster, prestige, the approval of his fellows, their good opinion, the opinion of men who'll be allowed to hold no opinion. An octopus, all tentacles and no brain. How is that not like our fucking social media society right now? An octopus, all tentacles and no brain.
Yeah, man. Everyone
just trying to virtue signal and prove to everyone else that they're on the good side.
I love the idea that when she said so innocent, an incentive is money.
Right.
Like that's
right,
like
that's Pelosi.
Trivial. That's trivial in
that's
comparison to the people that are after like this moral and spiritual takeover of our country.
Yeah, and the Game of Thrones reference. I mean, this squad they're the High Sparrows, and they're taking over. So this is what, if they ever win the presidency, oh my God, I can't even imagine if in 2020 they actually beat Trump. The first thing they would do is, I don't know, could they get away with it? But oh my gosh, I forgot to turn my phone off. Could they even get away with it? But I think they certainly would want to literally just make it an end to ever getting unelected after that.
Well,
and how much would we actually take? Like in California, we can see how they do this. They do it with fraud. They did they passed laws that allowed this crazy ballot harvesting. And after the election, operatives took addresses of people who had ordered a ballot but hadn't turned it in, who were also Democrats. And they went door to door and collected these ballots for them. And God only knows how many of these were actually real ballots. But they collected ballots of people who didn't actually send them in, but who were Democrats. With that, they found 250,000 new votes for Democratic candidates, and they kicked out 6 Republican House members who'd already flown to Washington to take their jobs.
Well, think of the political machines in the cities. I mean, Chicago's been under Democrat rule for a century. And same with some of these other big cities that are completely run into the ground. I mean, this is what they do. The ends justifies the means. That's their philosophy. They'll do whatever it takes to gain power.
But the thing is, too, I feel like just look at how they've acted in the last few years and how far left the Dems have swung and where the media is at. And how the media is just one hyper fake story after another. How Google search is fake. Everything is fake. And, Obama works at Netflix now. Michelle and Barack are doing Netflix shows. They're taking over, you guys. And if we have so little power left. But I do think that we're making headway in the cultural war. I think Trump has helped with that because not only are his words tough and he's making an impact by making them seem foolish, but I think he's emboldening other people on the right to be tougher too. And so I really do resent the weenies on the right because that's the last thing we need. We've had that for 3 decades.
Yeah, look at what it's gotten us.
Look where we are.
And, I want to make a couple other points too. That this whole like get the F out of here idea, that's American culture. That's a very American, that's a very, it's blunt, it's caustic, it's belligerent. I mean, that's like. It's
also New York.
It's New York. I mean, would a British person ever say that? No. That's why we love this country. It's blunt and it's, it's get the F out of here. Get out of here. It's that kind of an idea. Like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think. And that's partly why it resonates in our culture amongst good people and why I think it's healthy. So, once again, we've had enough. We've had enough of the other way. It's not.
Well, and this way, or whatever, the style is not authoritarianism. Like, no one's really proven that to me yet, but that's what they're saying. Oh, it's, you're picking the way of, like, in rejecting and in fighting the left, we're sliding into approving of a dictatorship on the right. And I'm like, what?
What?
Yeah. I mean, that's what they're saying. And
How?
I don't even get it.
That?
I don't even know how to understand that. Like, because Trump is an authoritarian guy, which I don't see. I mean, he's deregulated. He's like tariffs, maybe. I don't know what else he's done, except like these brash, words that he sometimes uses. I don't know what else he's done to make people think he's an authoritarian type. It's weird. It's a weird thing. And I certainly don't support that. I support freedom and I support individualism. But you're going to have to defeat these bad guys if you want that in this country. They're winning, everybody.
I mean, here's the point. Should we be waiting for the perfect candidate? I mean, Trump's not a perfect candidate. We would disagree. If he really had an impulse to like, I'm going to shut down this newspaper or something, of course he would be stopped. And everyone would, he doesn't have the power to do that.
He doesn't even have the power to do it.
Of course, but there's and yes, I'm sure he is a mixed character. And for people to think just because you support a tweet like this, you support like every aspect of this guy and his character and like everything he wants to do. No, we're saying there's a broad cultural war going. And the really, really, really evil side is the left. They're the ones who want to end free speech, like legally. They're the ones who want socialism.
I also
they're
feel
the ones
like
who want the Green New Deal to destroy our economy and industrial civilization. Now, Trump has flaws, but right now, the right, and I'm not saying we just go with everything Trump says. I'm talking about the right more as a movement and the kind of people right now that are reacting against the left. And that includes a lot of liberals and classic liberals. People that are just fed up with PC culture, with identity politics, with academia, and the kinds of things that are coming out of the universities, and the suffocating culture that they're creating, and this ripening of people into these, to being NPC robots.
Right. The octopus with no brain. All tentacles, no brain. Yeah, I agree. I think that he's not perfect. I also think, and this is I think this very, very strongly. If you want to avoid a strong man on the right, if you want to avoid sliding into a right-sided dictatorship, I mean, we are headed for a left-sided dictatorship right now. That's where we're headed. And yeah, we can go freedom, or we can go right-sided dictatorship, or we can go, if we can just kind of float along and end up in the left-sided dictatorship. But if you want to not have a dictatorship, you have to fight the current power, the left. That's where we're headed. And if you don't fight them, if people who love liberty don't provide a liberty-loving fight against the left, which they don't, they're also busy fighting Trump. If you don't fight the left and provide a liberty-loving fight against them that's actually effective, that will actually save people's families and neighborhoods and children, if you don't provide that, if you don't acknowledge the their fears are real and what they're dealing with are real in their neighborhoods, and you just poo-poo them and go, you can't be nasty, they're going to pick a strong man next. You know, they need a liberty-loving alternative. But if it comes down to it, if they're given the option, well, you can have a racist, powerful, anti-white, anti-American socialist government that's all up in your business and tracking you everywhere you go, and you're second-class citizens and your children won't get into good schools, and, you know, because they're going to be discriminated against because they're white, and white privilege has to be stopped. If you're facing that future for your kids, and your alternative, you know, and you don't give them an alternative, a way to save their family, and their only alternative ends up being some Mussolini character who says, yeah, okay, I'll fight the left for you, because you don't allow people like Trump to even like call them, tell them to get out, then they're going to pick Mussolini.
Right.
Because it's going to come down to survival. So think about that. You know, Trump's not a Mussolini. He's not a dictator, and you're against him because you don't want a right-sided dictator. But by fighting the one person who's fighting the left, who's not a dictator, you're going to usher in a Mussolini, because those people need to protect themselves and their future and the future of their children.
Well, and what a time for intellectual leadership on the right and moral,
right?
You know, and so if you're concerned, right, if you are concerned about the flaws that exist on the right, which there are plenty, then now's the time to jump in and say, hey, yeah, man, the left is evil. They're horrible. We love America. We love American values. But here's where we should be concerned, and here's where we should put our energy in, you know. And hey, Trump, if you say you're going to shut down a newspaper, don't you realize that that's contradictory to our whole cause, you know, and so on. And so, you know, that's the time for intellectual guidance and leadership, not he's bad, Orange Man bad.
Well, or you're sitting back and saying, it's not true that Facebook is fascist, when you have all this evidence in front of your face that it is. So the government shouldn't do anything about it because it's a private company. It's not a private company anymore, everybody. It hasn't been for 3 years. Sorry to tell you. And that's how they're hiding it and pretending. They're hiding it in front of your face. And they're giving you plausible deniability. I don't know. It seems obvious to me.
Yeah, well, that's the whole, I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole in big tech.
But the other thing, too, just to talk about just censorship in general and bring this back to humor, I'm noticing another disturbing trend. And, of course, it's all this stuff with you're not allowed to have your own. You have to obey. You have to be for unity. You have to be like this kumbaya. Imagine. The John Lennon song "Imagine" is the world that everybody seems to want, including people, liberty-loving people. Imagine all the people living. I mean, they want unity.
Sing it.
No religion. I don't know the lyrics. If I knew the lyrics, I would.
No border, no country.
Yeah. I looked this up the other day. Let me look it up because this is good.
Live as one.
Imagine all the people. Imagine there are no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only, you know. I mean, it's like, that's what people want. There's no greed, no hunger, a brotherhood of man. That's what people on the right who are fighting Trump, they want John Lennon's Imagine. They want open borders, and they want, you know, people shouldn't be hungry. They should be allowed to come here. And no, we have a right to our society.
It's a refusal to recognize good and evil, that it exists, and that there are good guys and bad guys too, and that you have to protect yourself.
It's a utopian fantasy, folks.
Yeah.
Worthy of hippies, and it's like it's infected our culture to the point that it's infected people who technically want individual rights and freedom, but they want it in this weird globalist imagine utopia way. Well, it just doesn't exist. I don't know.
No, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't exist. I mean, people shouldn't form countries. We shouldn't have a global. I mean, people form countries locally. But you were getting at this idea of gaslighting. I mean, don't you feel? And because you were mentioning this the other day.
Yeah, I was mentioning this the other day that
you're getting the sense
I'm starting to feel crazy. Like I'm starting to feel like I'm the crazy one, and because I'm laughing at off-color jokes, and people are like, you can't, that's inappropriate. You can't do that. And like, I laughed at a joke the other day with some Down syndrome kids on the, I mean, I actually really like Down syndrome kids. Like, I truly do. I think that people who have them in their family really love them. They're like these happy, shining people within these families. And there's that video. Have you ever seen that viral video of that adult Down syndrome man who has been away for a week from his dad, and he comes off the escalator and he runs to his dad who's like 80, Yeah. And he runs to his dad like a little kid, and they hug and kiss in the most sweet and sincere way that you don't see adults do. Mm-hmm. And it was so wonderful. And I thought, man, I want a Down syndrome kid. Like, I want to have, my child's going to grow up and leave me and not fucking care about me anymore. I'll take a Down syndrome kid.
See, now we can laugh about that, right? Because what you just said is really funny. And so is the joke you're referring to, where it's like Down syndrome people with like Trump and Pence, and there's like, who says Republicans and Democrats can't get along? I mean,
right.
That's funny, but of course, as good people, we recognize why that's wrong, but you can still laugh at it because it's funny.
It's wrong, and that's why I laughed. Because it's so wrong. And inappropriate off-color humor is funny. And somebody posted this. Nobody knows what you're talking about, Doug. It was a meme. It was a picture in the Oval Office, Trump and Pence, with some Down syndrome kids. And it just said, Democrats and Republicans can get along or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, I laughed. And I was scolded for it, and I'm like, fuck, am I going crazy? I feel like the world has moved away from me, and I'm still back here going, wait a sec, off-color humor is okay.
Yeah, remember?
And no, you're not allowed to joke about that stuff anymore. You're not allowed to have a racist joke. The other day I was Googling ethnic joke, and I'm not allowed to say a joke about a Polak, an Italian, and an Irishman walking to a bar. That's not acceptable anymore. And we're being gaslighted into thinking that somehow everybody agrees that that's not appropriate. And I think a lot of people go along with it because that's where the culture has gone, and they're kind of virtue signaling. They're afraid to laugh at that. I'm sorry, but okay, people with Down syndrome have low IQs. So the joke is Democrats have low IQs. And it's a visual joke because Down syndrome, you know Down syndrome people by looking at them. Okay,
Sonny,
people?
we get it. You don't have to explain it. Maybe to some people.
Oh my God, lighten up, everybody.
I got it. But yeah.
So I think we are being, so I said to my friend, I'm like, am I going crazy? And is this gaslighting to make me feel like I live in this world where I'm the weird one?
Yeah.
And my friend said, oh, yeah, it's gaslighting. And I said, well, how do you know? How do you know that the majority hasn't just moved? And he said, because they're trying so hard to make you feel crazy. They're trying so hard to make sure you know you're wrong, that the majority of people must not. I mean, they're working too hard at it.
Yeah.
If it were true that the majority were on that side and really didn't react to that off-color joke with a little chuckle, then they wouldn't try so hard. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who find that inappropriate, because humor is really subjective. So not everybody's going to laugh at that. But
here's a point. I remember Rand saying, like, the essence of American culture was disobedience to authority. And I think that's why it's going to take a generation or more for them to beat out the sense of humor and the disobedience out of the American people. And that's what's happening.
Right.
And we're in the process of that happening right now. And you're seeing it with in comedy and in our culture and movies and TV where you can't say. How many times have you heard recently a comedian or someone say, "Oh, they could never get away with that today"? And it's a movie from like 2 years ago,
right?
Or 5 years ago,
right.
or something. Or I'll go to YouTube and watch Rodney Dangerfield on Carson in the 70s, or Don Rickles, in the 70s at a roast or something like that, where they're telling racist jokes. Yeah. I mean, and you say, they couldn't get away with that today. Why?
Yeah, why? Why can't we?
We're just all accepting that. I mean,
and the truth is that a joke works when people laugh at it. And, so but I think people are genuinely repressing laughter now. I think that that's actually happening. And so it is changing what people will laugh at and what they won't laugh at, because they won't allow themselves to just sort of be loose and laugh at what's fun, at a good joke. That meme was funny. And people will even think that I'm inappropriate for saying I want a Down syndrome kid, because they're like, that's going to be really inappropriate. And I know, because I have close friends with a Down syndrome kid, that there are a lot of health problems that go along with that, heart problems and other things. So obviously, I don't really wish that on anybody. It's a scary disease or chromosomal problem. It's a scary problem. So I'm saying that in jest, but God, everybody just needs to lighten up. And people need to let themselves laugh. We need like a revival here of humor and off-color stuff, and we need to go to the other extreme and be racist. I want to make racist jokes just because I can't,
Well, yeah, and black people are also. I mean, how many awesome sort of like racist sets have you heard from great black comedians like Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle or something? It's so funny, and everyone knows it.
Right.
And we're supposed to pretend that there are not cultural differences, or that there's not these sort of like stereotypical features that we all laugh at each other about.
Just like you're supposed to pretend that when you look at those four ladies, you don't think foreigner, even though they shove it in your face every day. It's like
that's gaslighting.
We're gaslighted. We're supposed to pretend like we don't see and know things that we see and know. And that, I think, is the critical thing for everybody to do. We need to throw off that emotional repression and the intellectual repression that we are all living under, some serious intellectual crushing rules, these PC rules. And I don't think we even realize it.
Well, and that's another reason why Trump is popular, because he is uninhibited by it. He's from another generation.
Yeah.
And he says F you to everybody. And he's kind of like that guy. And he's the guy that everybody kind of wants to be, or, and that's why it's popular, because someone's expressing that.
And the people who are responding to Trump with, oh no, oh my God, he can't say that, are operating under this PC oppressive ideology. So think about that.
Oh,
I mean, if you want people to not laugh at an off-color joke, if you think that's wrong, you've got to like look within. And I mean, the guy who gave me crap about that, if he's listening, he knows who he is, because only one guy did that.
Well, if it's one guy, then I guess you can't be.
Well,
we can't think it's everybody.
No, on the meme where the guy posted the meme, this Brandon guy, Mr. Cropper, I'll give him a shout out. He's actually got a YouTube channel. I found out yesterday. He's been going to town on the memes lately, and he has a YouTube channel. I believe it's under Brandon Cropper. And anyway, he's an objectivist, but he posted this meme with these Down syndrome kids, and a lot of people came over to tell him it was inappropriate. And I'm like, first of all, if someone posts a joke that's not appropriate, that you don't like, you don't laugh at, and you kind of go, which is fine. Don't say anything. Just move on.
Go away. Move on.
Right? Let the rest of us laugh at it and enjoy it.
No.
People have different senses of humor, everybody. Get over it. I feel like these are people who supposedly love freedom, but they don't really love freedom. They don't really want you to laugh at an off-color joke. That's not appropriate.
They want to tell you they're like the church lady. That's how this is all flipped.
I'm so sick of it. It's not immoral to laugh at an off-color joke. And the guy who gave me personal shit, said it was like you have the mentality of a 12-year-old. Okay, fine.
The compliment.
You're like an old lady. You have the mentality of an old lady, an old church lady.
Yeah. Well, when we were kids, we were suffocated and oppressed at that time, seemingly by the religious right. It was the moral majority types, who wanted to rape records and who wanted to censor movies and censor pornography. And Dana Carvey's character, the church lady, was the perfect kind of caricature of that, and that was almost like the end of that. Yeah, Satan, and he was this old lady scold who, saw everything as satanic. And now that's completely flipped. The church ladies now are the left. Mm-hmm. And I see in my kids now, they're laughing at their joke now when I see him with his friends is sort of like, oh, that offends me. Oh, I'm triggered by that. They use those words as like jokes now.
Yeah.
And I
that
hope that
newsflash,
continues.
millennials, the Gen Z doesn't like it. So there's two generations in our culture who are the scolds, the baby boomers and millennials.
Yeah.
And operating together, they're trying to get the job done of changing the culture into imagine there's no countries.
Sing it. We're going to ban you from singing.
I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger.
Kumbaya.
A brotherhood of man. Or like the Tui thing about unity and not thinking for yourself and having to, a world of obedience and unity, a world where the thought of each man won't be his own because you have to check with your neighbor and see what's okay.
And you know what the left calls unity and obedience? They have a word for it.
What's that?
Diversity.
Oh, yeah. Right. Diversity is unity and obedience.
It's perfectly Orwellian.
So Orwellian. Diversity is obedience.
Do not go against the group.
Yeah, and the group happens to be a fractured, racist. Actually, they're all the same. They may all be different victimologies, but they're all the same. Soul sisters. Okay, that's it for our show today. I think we covered a lot. I think we had some good insights.
We got Darth Vader in. We got John Lennon in.
We got the Skywalker tribe, the
church lady.
Our mindless, brutish Trump love.
We got you singing
for
Trump bots.
All right, we did a lot, and please comment. I mean, we want to hear from you. Do you think we're wrong? Am I really just? Am I on the other side of history?
Maybe we're just getting old. I don't know.
I'm kidding. We are. Well, that is true. Okay.
No, we're like the kids in Footloose, man.
Yeah.
Like I want to dance, baby. We're trying to get rid of John Lithgow.
Let's go into the barn and do some dancing. All right, guys, let us know what you think. We want to hear from you. Hey, listen, I'm open to the other opinion too because I'm not a fucking PC nut. All right. We'll see you next week. Oh, hey, go to Subscribestar and support the show at House of Sunny. What else? Subscribe to the channel at House of Sunny on YouTube, over at BitChute, House of Sunny. See you all next week.
Thanks for listening to the House of Sunny podcast. Go check out Sunny on YouTube at her channel, House of Sunny. Everything Sunny does is fan-funded, and because she's likely to get kicked off and demonetized on every platform at some point, please support her over at patreon.com/House of Sunny. Become one of Sunny's elite squad and have access to behind-the-scenes footage, t-shirts, special events, and more.